We are in Berlin's old Jewish district. Even though we're only a 10-minute walk away from Alexanderplatz and the city center, it's always calm and quiet in this area. Little is left of the hay barns that give the Scheunenviertel its name. This is now an up-and-coming neighborhood, certainly gentrified and now filled with boutiques and art galleries and burger joints. But in Berlin, not even a trendy, refined district can escape the weight of history. Behind me is the Neue Synagoge, a proud synagogue that shows its golden dome and its elaborate facade to the entire city. The construction of this Moorish-style temple came in 1866, a time of radical change for Judaism in Germany. This is, after all, not just a pretty building, but a liberal, reformed synagogue, the banner of a community that was finding its voice within German society. It was in these interconnected courtyards, in their cramped and often twisted spaces, that tens of thousands of Eastern European Jews found a home in the early 20th century. Anti-Semitic violence and the First World War turned millions of them into exiles in a permanent quest for refuge. Many of these Jewish families came to Berlin in the 1910s and 20s on their way to Hamburg, where they could board a ship bound for the United States. America was the dream, but many of them got stuck here, lacking the right paperwork or adequate funds, and so they shaped the city, and the city shaped them in return. The traces of Jewish life in this neighborhood seem to be gone. This here used to be a Hebrew bookstore. Just down the street, you'd find a fruit and vegetable store, windows covered in Hebrew signs, and then right above the fresh produce, 4 prayer rooms for the community. That world is gone, a memory that can only be found in old photographs. It was forcefully removed. The 1930s shattered the windows of that world and drove the residents into exile or death. Their losses are replaceable, but the city hasn't forgotten. It is impossible to walk the streets of the Scheunenviertel without stumbling across memory, in some cases quite literally. These brass cobblestones are called Stolpersteine, or stumbling stones. Engraved on them are the names of former residents, Jewish families, Sinti and Roma, political opponents that suffered Nazi extermination or persecution. They are everywhere, on the streets, on the doorsteps, making sure that you can't help but stumble upon memory as you walk around Berlin. Not just in Berlin, but you can find these memorial cobblestones in 24 countries, more than 2,000 cities. It is the biggest decentralized memorial in the world. In Berlin, history is always around the corner. This empty space between buildings is called the Missing House. It's an art installation and memorial created by French artist Christian Boltanski. It uses emptiness and absence and what's no longer there to tell a story. Those up there are the names of former residents. This, before the war, was an apartment block, and the war frenzy of Nazi Germany, who eagerly started that conflict, turned this building, and with it, its residents, into rubble. Today, the nameplates remind us that in this neighborhood, even the empty spaces are full of stories. In this small alley, past and present face each other. On one side, a building retains the wounds inflicted by the Red Army during the Battle of Berlin. Hundreds of bullet holes and even balconies that completely crumble down. Then, right across the alley from it, an identical building faces it with a renovated facade, with wounds that have been healed, maybe just covered. Past and present face each other here. And then overlooking the scene, there is the beautiful Church of Sophienkirche that has been in this neighborhood since the 1700s, and it definitely puts things into perspective. Maybe the 1930s are closer than we think. The destruction of Berlin was so absolute that not even the cemeteries were spared. This area behind me, today a memorial garden, used to be the old Jewish cemetery. From 1672, thousands of Jewish Berliners were buried here, the likes of famous German philosopher Moses Mendelssohn or renowned architect Vital Ephraim, among others. The place was ravaged by the Nazis in 1942, who turned the former cemetery into a holding camps to gather former residents who would later be transported to the death camps. This sculpture in front of the former cemetery commemorates the 55,000 Jewish residents and families that were transported to camps from this very location. As you can see, passing visitors have left stones and flowers on the pedestals as a way of showing love for the departed. We finished, like many people do, our journey through Berlin's Old Jewish Quarter here, a journey that doesn't end in the tragedy of the Second World War and the Holocaust, but that carries on as survival, return, resistance, and remembrance, and with the clear realization that memory is all we have.